I'm Anthony,
I'm Brandon.
and today we're going to be reviewing Tokyo Godfathers, which is a classic anime movie from 2003 by the late great director Satoshi Kon. So one of the things that sticks out the most about Tokyo Godfathers and all Satoshi Kon movies is the art. And so I just found out doing the research for this movie that it's all by the same guy, Nobutaka Ike, which is weird because he's not really known for anything else. You know, he's done some background art for like Pat Labor. He's done some background art for some Gundam stuff. So this guy's known mostly for Satoshi Kon movies, and he does a great job. I mean, every time I watch one of these movies, it's like this real twist, like real combination of like realism, but the action is still really fluid and cartoony.
Yeah, like you definitely get face stretches and like typical like anime long faces, like stuff like that. But at the same time, it'll also have this hint of realism to it that it'll bring to the picture.
Yeah, like the lighting effects are really good. Like just the way that all the skyscrapers look. I mean, it's almost like Makoto Shinkai, like except it's not so 3D. You know, there's not so many like glares and sun flares and all that stuff going on.
Yeah, it's more like if you're looking at the backgrounds, like a realistic picture of Japan more so. It's like almost just on the hint of realism. Like you can still tell that it's painted, but it's done in such a way where it gives a little bit of life to like everything that you'd probably see just walking around Tokyo.
Yeah, and especially this movie in particular, for all of the Kon or Nobutaka Ite movies, this one is a Christmas movie. And it all takes place in Tokyo with snow on the ground, which you normally don't really see portrayed. You know, most of the time when you see Tokyo portrayed, it's usually pretty warm out. And if there is a snow, it only lasts for like a day, and then, it goes away once it hits the ground.
Yeah, very unusual for like anything that, deals with Tokyo.
Yeah, which is great, because being from Michigan, I mean, we just know the snow. I mean, half of our lives have been spent looking at snow. So it's really nice to see, one of our favorite directors, one of the all-time great anime people, just portray Tokyo in such a Christmassy, snowy way that really relates to us as Americans, living in a northern climate.
With the animation, like I'd say for this film, it's very fluid. Like it's not choppy like you see in like a lot of anime series. It's something that just like there's a natural grace to it. You're never distracted by it. And when the animation takes off, it's fluid. It looks really nice, and it's just a real treat for the eye.
Yeah, it sure is, man. They really know how to use the facial expressions too, especially with Hannah.
Yeah.
Man, Hannah's face with those gap teeth and everything,
Oh yeah.
It's just like perfectly animated.
Yeah, they're all just like they're very expressive. Like you don't look at it and just say like, oh, this is like really stale and not emotive. It's just like every scene is just you can feel the characters' emotions portrayed really well by the animator.
Yeah, and just the character designs too. Like the way that their noses all just look so nice and round, and like it all just feels very like warm and soft and round. There aren't a whole lot of sharp edges,
Yeah, they tend to really go a little bit more towards the realism, just like the environment, to give it more of a human element rather than what you see with a normal anime series where, you just have like pointed noses, pointed chins. Like, no, you won't see any of that in this movie. It's rounded off. They're going for more of a softer, natural look.
Music is done by Keiichi Suzuki, and his band known as the Moonriders. Now, I'd never heard of this band before, but apparently they're an alternative rock band, that's been big in Japan, at least as far as, like indie rock goes, for 30 years.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that. Like, in this movie, I feel like there's a lot of kind of more natural sounds, like you hear drums, like accordions, and it doesn't really come off as something you normally hear from a rock group. Like it's more so like I feel like I guess more of the culture rather than anything that you'd hear here in the U.S.
It's very evocative. I mean, it's unique
Yeah.
too. I mean, I've never heard music that sounds quite like the music from this movie.
No, never. It's usually you get like pianos, but a little less so. There's more like kind of like natural instruments, I'd say. Right?
Oh yeah, and it always fits the scene too, which you can't always say about some of the Satoshi Kon movies. Like when Susumu Hirasawa does the Kon movies, sometimes the music kind of outdoes the picture, the animation itself. I feel like that's particularly true with Millennium Actress. Like sometimes the Susumu Hirasawa music can just like, be better than what's on the screen sometimes, but
Yeah.
this music for Tokyo Godfathers just fits right into every scene. Like during the chase scene, they were using like some synthesizers, and it was just kind of more electronic, and it all worked in really well.
Yeah. The plot of Tokyo Godfathers. Well, it's pretty much three homeless people are digging in the trash, and they find a baby, like just sitting in the trash, and they're wondering where their mother is. And from there, it's pretty much their adventure to find this mother and reunite the baby with the mother. And along the way, you discover more and more about their characters and their reasonings for actually undertaking this journey.
Yeah, the plot of this movie is one of the best like plots for a theatrical animation that I've ever seen. I mean, three homeless people find a baby in the trash, and then the rest of the movie is just them trying to figure out what to do with this baby. I mean, and especially in Japan, because homelessness in Japan is very taboo, and for a director like Satoshi Kon, and he had already done Millennium Actress, he had already done Perfect Blue, so by the time he had done Tokyo Godfathers, he was a well-known director, and he decided to take the point of view of these three homeless people. And in the movie, they tackle the subject of violence against homeless people in Japan that's really not dealt with at all.
Yeah.
There are homeless people who are murdered, by Japanese teenagers, and nobody ever gets in trouble.
Yeah. It's just like one of those hidden things that you don't really see at the forefront of Japanese culture because of this very buttoned down conservative culture that they have. So it's very big for Satoshi Kon to come out and have this story about these three homeless people, and not only that, but going deeper into their characters as far as their reasons for being homeless, and also their plans for the future and the present.
The way that the movie moves is just so effortless. I mean, from the first scene, you just get swept up in it, almost like it's a train ride.
Yeah.
Not too much work that you have to do as the viewer. It's all pretty much right in front of you. And you just have to, you're just swept along by the music and the animation and the characters.
There's never a dull moment in this movie. Like there's always something to grasp onto. There's always a moment that you want to look deeper into in order to just understand the emotions and the reasonings behind the characters' actions.
The main characters of the movie are Gin, Hannah, Miyuki,
Yeah.
and Kyoko. So Gin is he's like 50.
Yeah, late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah, late 40s, early 50s. Down and out, kind of your classic like homeless guy.
Yeah. Grumpy, alcoholic, and just
gambler,
and just kind of down and out in the world, and just you can see it in his actions and how he talks about these, like, what's going on in the plot of the story.
Yep, and then there's Hannah, who's the transgendered male to female. I mean, for being a movie from 2003,
Yeah.
I mean, this was just ahead of its time dealing with transgendered issues at all. I mean, this was a time period where people were walking around saying the F word, just out in public, just as if it were a joke. So, yeah, and from this movie being from 2003, to have a transgendered person as a main character is ahead of its time,
Yeah.
And I think that it dealt with it beautifully. But and then there's Miyuki, and she's the runaway, teenaged, I guess kind of your stereotypical, runaway.
Yeah, she has circumstances that have forced her out from her natural family into finding Gin and Hana, who she lives with in a cardboard home in like a park in Tokyo.
Yeah, well, and the house that these guys live in is just very cozy. I mean, I love the way that they portray it in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, when they all come home and there's just they got their little setup. They even have a little TV in there, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah, even the little TV. It's like it's not something that you probably see normally portrayed. It's like they wouldn't. I feel as if in Japanese culture they normally wouldn't show like, hey, these people live in a. Even though it's in the middle of this park, they live in a home that's warm and rather safe for them.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes it feel cozy, especially when they bring our fourth character,
Yes.
Kyoko, home to them in the tent. And then they settle down, they get them some milk, they send Miyuki out to get the water, the bottled water, because Hannah doesn't want the baby Kyoko drinking from the tap, so... it's all very family-oriented. It kind of reminds me of the Japanese movie that came out a couple of years ago called Shoplifters. And it's kind of about, now in Shoplifters it's, they're not exactly homeless, but it's kind of this, like, crazy family that works. And it's also a kid that they just find on the street. I forget exactly how Shoplifters goes. But then, it ends up becoming this loving family, and they end up doing all these weird, on the outside of society, like, things, but it's all very, nice, and within that family it feels wholesome. And
yeah, I feel like that's one of the things that you really see as the movie moves along, is that the care that each character, from Gin to Hana to Miyuki, that they actually have for each other. Like, yes, you kind of see them a little bit at their worst in the beginning of the movie, but as it moves on, it kind of shows that, yes, like, even though Gin's a grumpy guy, he does care for Miyuki, he does care for Hana. Like, although, like, he doesn't tell them the truth about his life, as the story moves on, he does reveal more and more about himself, opening up and kind of enriching these relationships that he has with these two characters.
yeah, it all very, because at first, they don't know about each other either. We're all kind of figuring it out together. The movie pulls us into the family, and they're all revealing themselves to each other at the same time that they're revealing it to us, and so we get to experience these characters, finding out these secrets about each other for the first time. And, it really makes you feel like you're a part of their inner circle in a way that, not too many movies are able to really do.
Yeah, like you find out about, say, Miyuki's home life, and about how she was struggling to really connect with her father, and how she ended up stabbing him and running away, and that's why she's in the situation with Gin and Hana. You realize that she struggled with really connecting with her father the way that she kind of connects with Gin and Hana.
And Gin and Hannah's relationship is pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
Because it really is like a husband and a wife, And then they've got like their teenage daughter.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then it's almost kind of like Then their teenage daughter has a daughter. And that's kind of like how the family is operating at that point, you know. Like Gin and Hannah are like the grandparents or something to Kyoko, the baby.
Yeah. It's like kind of interesting how just the movie starts off with Hannah, wishing for this baby, then boom, this miracle happens. And, there's Kyoko, and, she's saying it's a miracle, and, like, from the beginning, there's kind of just this a bit of luck that they have. Like in the first scene where they're taking Kyoko back to their home, and a can of glue falls over right in between Hannah and Gin, and it doesn't touch both of them. And it's just one of the kind of the themes of the movie where they have this luck that seems to persist as soon as they have Kyoko.
And yeah, and the miracles that keep happening throughout the movie, it's like on one hand it's kind of heavy-handed, because it's like Christmas and Christianity, and there's like an angel that rescues Gin in the alley after he gets beaten up by all these teenagers. So the Christianity, part of it is, I don't know really whether or not, because Kon being from Japan, obviously Christianity is, how many people are Christian in Japan? I think it's some ridiculously small number, like 50,000 people in Japan are Christians,
Yeah.
I mean, he comes at it from, like, a completely fresh perspective, though, because it's just so, like, unpretentious. Like, on one hand, it's heavy-handed, but on the other hand, it's just so unpretentious in a way that an American could never make a movie about Christmas and have it be Yeah,
it's more about the values rather than the rhetoric, I'd say.
Yeah.
And that really shines through with themes of family and just, like having these miracles happen, because it's just like saying that, it's a good world out there. Like, even though these people are homeless, good things can happen. It's not hopeless. It's a good world.
Yeah. Like, like, especially, like, at the end when Hannah, like, when they're all trying to, like, save each other, when Sachiko, the mother of Kyoko, tries jumping off the building.
Yeah.
And then they all, like, try saving each other, and then eventually they keep falling, and Hannah falls, and then the wind just catches the banner that she's holding on to, and...
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of the movie, because it just shows, like, you think you're going to have this really bad ending where, Hannah falls with the baby, but it's like, no, it's just she's saved by this miracle that, you weren't really expecting.
Yeah, like, the whole movie is just so, like, positive.
Yeah.
Like, even when the mafia guy gets shot, like, he's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's like nobody's dying. Like, the assassin, they just end up going to his house and, like, hanging out with his wife, for, like, 20 minutes of the movie. Like, Mizuki? Miyuki?
Yeah.
Miyuki's just over there just hanging out with his wife. She's just breastfeeding the babies, like...
Yeah. It's just like, it's thoughts, like, because the way that the scene is framed, he's just, like, has her at gunpoint, and he's taking her to this place, and he steps on this needle in the alley, and she thinks he's about to go into, like, a human trafficking situation, and it's just totally, like, his girlfriend or his wife, and she just has this, like, beautiful character growing moment where she realizes how she misses her family, and how she realizes, like, what she had, but at the same time, she's also seeing her relationship with Gin and Hana, and how that's even positive for her, because what she had before at home when she was struggling with her father, that she's having these visions while she's asleep on the floor in this room, and then she, like, also suddenly her mom's placed by Hana and her father's replaced by Gin, and she's just, like, looking at him just like, oh, I didn't look at them like this before. Like, even though I had, like, kind of this a little bit of a rough relationship with Gin, it's not quite like her father, where she's, like, pushed to the point where she's, like, she wants to hurt him in order to get her father to see him. And, like, Gin, sees her and accepts Miyuki for who she is. And as far as, like, Hana, she, like, kind of sees, like, how Hana also is this more involved mother figure than she's had before as well.
It's all just it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
It's all just beautiful, man. This movie just makes you feel good about life. You know, makes you believe that miracles are commonplace. You know, which really they probably are. You know, which is probably what Kon was trying to say with this movie. You know, is that small miracles happen every day. You know, we don't necessarily pay attention to them or give them the proper time that they deserve in our thoughts. You know. And and so that is another theme of the movie, which I think is about, you know, cycles of human behavior, you know, throughout time. How Gin and the old man that he finds, and then also the young man that he finds, they're all kind of the same person. You know, they're all kind of going through the same cycles of life. And so you see this pattern repeated over and over. So I think that kind of, it's another way of saying, like, it's not your fault, Gin. Like, this happens to people, you know, like, this isn't your fault, you know, this is kind of a societal issue, really, you know. A lot of gambling and alcohol addiction going on in the world out there, you know. So, for me, how I feel about this movie, personally, you know, Satoshi Kon is one of my favorite directors. I mean, I would probably put him possibly number 2, maybe number 3, behind only Makoto Shinkai and Isao Takahata. You know, so I'd probably put Kon right beneath those two, possibly even better than Makoto Shinkai. You know, but you know, he died too young. You know, so that's the only reason. I mean, I would probably like him even better than Takahata if he had lived longer, you know. I mean, his movies are just amazing. These are like some of my favorite movies. I mean, just the way that he uses the music, combined with the animation, combined with, like, the psychedelic storytelling, and also just the down-home, like, warmth that he always seems to infuse in his characters and the character designs. Now, that's one of the strongest things about Kon, is he was a manga artist, you know, so he wrote some good mangas before he ever became a director. So I think that really helps him understand characters and just the way that they need to look. And so, I mean, this for me is probably in my top 10 movies, anime movies. You know, I think the only thing that would keep it out of being, you know, like one of my absolute favorites is just that it's kind of a hunky-dory movie. You know, I mean, it makes you feel good. It doesn't really challenge you too much. Yeah. You know, it's kind of just like a nice, easy ride through an interesting world. You know, it just looks fantastic. You know, but for me, like, if I was going to pick my favorite Kon movie, I would have to say Perfect Blue, you know, just because of how crazy it is. You know, like, you know, but, so, you know, everybody's got their own reasons for liking things. For me, I mean, you can't go wrong with this movie. I don't think that anybody who's ever seen this movie thought it was bad by any stretch. You know, yeah. I mean, it might be a little slow for some people, you know, but I think that the character animation mixed with the music and the pacing, it all makes it interesting. You know, I mean, the backgrounds are just gorgeous to look at. You know, yeah, great movie.
Yeah. As a newcomer to watching more anime movies, this is one of my first. Like, have seen Satoshi Kon in the past. Like, I did watch Paprika, but as far as, like, say, watching stuff in the present, I'd say I was blown away by this movie. I was never bored by it. I always looking forward to the next scene and seeing where the characters were going, how they're developing, and unraveling the mystery of Kyoko and, you know, where she belongs. And I'd say that, yeah, this movie's beautiful. The backgrounds are beautiful. The character animation, just like the heart. You can tell that a lot of love and craft was put into this movie. And for someone that's new to anime, like this is a great movie to start off with. Like I feel that, if you're not looking for something that could be hyper violent, hyper sexualized, that, anime could be sometimes, this movie starts off like, in square one, where it just gives you a nice down home story that you can relate to. You can relate to these characters, and you can relate to a story about family and where you belong in society.
So Tokyo Godfathers gets 4 thumbs up and a high five.
Oh, yeah.